Okay, so I'm curious, as another follow-up, there's a special from Nvidia's Quantum Computing Day. I tried to search for it on YouTube and I couldn't find it, so
From the heart of where innovation, money, and power collide in Silicon Valley and beyond, this is Bloomberg Technology with Caroline Hyde and Ed Ludlow.
Why not just do a bit busy? Get on with it.
Yeah, welcome to this special edition of Bloomberg Technology. I am Ed Ludlow. We're live in San Jose at Nvidia's GTC conference, where the major focus today has been quantum computing. Over the next 30 minutes or so, we're going to speak to Nvidia's Senior Director of Quantum, Tim Costa, as well as the leaders of quantum computing companies IonQ and D-Wave. And actually, I want to look at the shares of those companies. There was some downward pressure on a number of quantum computing stocks today. I flagged that only because that pressure continued as they were speaking on stage alongside Nvidia's CEO, Jensen Huang. Now remember, quantum stocks went into free fall on January 8th, after Nvidia's CEO said we were more than a decade away from quantum computers being able to do anything useful. Now fast forward to today, and Huang had this to say about those earlier comments. Have a listen.
Quantum. Yes, I'm trying to listen.
I'm a public company CEO, and
Okay.
Every so often someone asks me a question,
Yes.
and most of the time, well, some of the time, I'm trying to lower the bar here. Some of the time, I say something right, and sometimes it comes out wrong.
Yeah, I'm going to try to find the
Now here's the
video when
thing.
they release it.
In the world of technology,
I mean, I don't know. I went to the Nvidia website. It wasn't there. I mean, it happened yesterday. It's been 24 hours. It's still not released. In this day and age, that's just so weird. So I don't know if I'm looking in the wrong place.
historically at least, these have been two distinct fields: quantum computing and accelerated computing, or supercomputers for AI. But increasingly, those worlds are coming together. Joining me now is Tim Costa, who's the Senior Director for Quantum Computing at Nvidia. And I think a really important place to start is what Nvidia does at Nvidia. Now is Tim Costa, who's the Senior Director for Quantum Computing
Senior Director for Quantum Computing. Okay.
at Nvidia. And I think a really important place to start is what Nvidia does and what Nvidia does not do.
Sure.
Nvidia does not make quantum computers, nor does it sell quantum computers,
No, it does not.
but it does provide architecture, software, and services to that industry. Just explain your role, please.
Yeah.
I mean, his role is just to keep his fingers in butts in case things change.
You nailed it on the head with the easy part, which is what we don't do. We do not build a quantum computer. But we have a vision about where how quantum computing will.
I mean, I'm always curious about stuff like this. So he's a Senior Director of Quantum Computing. LinkedIn. So, I'm not signed in. Okay, fine. Ted Costa. LinkedIn. I'll link it in. Nvidia. Can I just see his profile without, no? Yeah, I'm just curious what his background is. So there's a lot of people in quantum who have almost nothing to do with quantum. They're just there because it sounded cool at the time. And I guess it's an easy way to make money.
Will be useful. And it's really a point at which we have the integration of larger scale quantum technologies, quantum processors, as part of data centers and large scale computing that looks very similar to what we have today, right? If you look at today's large scale computing infrastructure, it's CPUs and GPUs and storage and memory and interconnects, and it's very complex but very heterogeneous. And each part plays the role that it's best suited for, including the CPU and including the GPU. quantum technology offers promise to be very good at certain kinds of computation, and so that will be an additional element of that system and come in. And so what we're focused on is really helping the quantum tech companies who are building those technologies to better develop those technologies, because we're interested in solving the problems that it will be able to solve. But also B, setting up that infrastructure to be the best partner to that quantum device, to be able to do things like error correction, calibration of the devices. These are in some ways things you can think about as physics experiments upon which we try to compute as much as a computer. And so managing that physics experiment and getting the right results out of it is actually a complex computational task that we look to our AI accelerator.
It's impressive. It's a lot of words with little content.
It's supercomputers to actually perform.
What we are literally talking about here is a computer scientist or engineer at a quantum computing company with access to some of your GPUs in whatever form factor. Could just be the single GPU, could be scaled up to that server design, which we know as DGX. What's the market there? You know, how widely is your technology being used in parallel with many of the quantum names that we saw today?
So who we saw on stage today was a great selection of our partners who are all engaged with and who all are using GPU technology as well as accelerated computing technology, including the software stacks and other components that we develop, in their research program to simulate their devices and build better versions of them.
Yeah, and again, just keep in mind, this is the opinion of Director of Quantum for an American GPU company. And there's no mention of the progress that's been made in China. It's almost as if there's nothing happening outside of Silicon Valley and what's going on over here. And
of their QPUs to work with their clients and work on algorithm design by simulating a quantum computer, and also doing the fundamental research to drive towards that vision that I just discussed a minute ago, where we actually have this tight integration of these devices together. That involves work on the interconnect between the QPU and the GPU. That involves developing new methods for error correction that can be deployed at scale.
So he's talking really fast. Essentially, interconnect is essentially just how do you get the quantum processor and the classical computer to talk to each other. Not such a big deal if that's what he's talking about. If he's talking about read in and read out, that's a whole separate issue. So I'm not really understanding why he's talking about these things as if they're big deals.
On a large supercomputer using novel AI methods, among many other areas. But those are not our only partners in this ecosystem. We're working with over 160 groups in quantum computing, and the range of application areas is quite wide, but they're all using Nvidia technology to accelerate their work, because that's what we're ultimately here to do.
So we started the day with the idea.
Okay, so his job is essentially, to sell Nvidia GPUs and GPU resources to quantum. So he doesn't care. He's not really interested in the quantum computing itself. He is a salesperson whose job is to oversee getting Nvidia product out there in the quantum, I guess, arena.
That Nvidia,
so that's sort of his market.
Technology can help quantum computers accelerate their own timeline, reach that useful metric. But the idea raised and put to Jensen Huang by those partners was actually the output of a quantum computer. In other words, the computation can work both ways. It could be submitted for use in the training of a foundation model. What do you make of that?
Yeah, so I think that there's two sides of AI and quantum, and they're both really important and really fascinating. And what I touched on a few minutes ago was the AI for quantum, right? Using AI models to actually control and error correct larger and larger and more capable quantum devices. It's incredibly important, and it pulls in the timeline on useful quantum computing.
Yes.
Now, the other side that was brought up today, and it's a fascinating topic, is...
So he's talking really fast, so just in case you didn't follow, what he's saying is using classical computers and classical AI to help speed up the production or the breakthroughs in quantum computing.
You know, what is a quantum computer if you start to boil it down, and I won't try to go too far down. But they're really physics experiments, as I said. You're modeling quantum physics in the device. And so they're able to...
You're modeling quantum physics in the device. Um, um, no, you're utilizing the nature of quantum physics to perform very sophisticated computations, some of which are modeling of physical phenomena like chemistry and protein folding.
To potentially provide data to train and fine-tune models for understanding the very phenomena which are inside of a quantum computer in a way which will answer questions that humanity has been unable.
What? This is a quantum. So this was a bit of a circular, weird. I don't really. What? I mean, so it just feels that there's a lot of words with very little content, like very little actual content. Like that second part, I just did not follow at all. So, quantum computers is a quantum. It models quantum physics, and then we can use that in order to feed into our AI in order to model stuff to get back. You know, it's not a very elegant explanation, and I'm not even exactly sure what he's trying to describe here. I have no idea what he's talking about. I'll be honest. I mean, what is interesting is the use of quantum computing and quantum resources like qubits to see if they can be used for neural networks. So if you replace your weights with quantum weights or with qubits, then can you infer with less energy? Can you train with less energy? Is there a way of just simultaneously running through with all the iterations and the feed, just once, and just collapsing and getting the weights out, so to speak? I mean, so this is something I would like to have time to think about, but I don't have any idea what he said right there.
To answer. So we think that that's a really interesting and exciting area to pursue. And we're engaged with our partners across all these different areas.
I don't think...
What?
That in the context of all the attendees I've spoken to today and Jensen and the panelists, that we've kind of reached definitive agreement on what useful is. But I think we've definitely reached agreement within your industry that this accelerates what's happening. Yeah. Pardon the pun, accelerated quantum computing. What happens next for Nvidia and their footprint in quantum? There is going to be a research center in Boston. Those can often be abstract things, but why is that an important step?
I mean, why would you have a research center in Boston when you've got Stanford and Berkeley just down the road? So I'm very confused about why you wouldn't have a research center right here in Silicon Valley. It's not like Boston is cheaper by much. I'm kind of confused.
It's an important step because one of the things that we have to do if we're going to build a new kind of computer, and if we add a quantum accelerator to a computer like what we build today, that is a new kind of computer. You're adding a new compute element. That is a physical endeavor. It has a footprint. It needs a place to do it. Now, the center in Boston won't be the only place that happens in the world, but it's a place where some of our partners and us can work on developing the interconnect, developing the error correction technologies, literally string up their quantum devices to our GPUs and build the first versions of these quantum accelerated supercomputers that we're all working towards.
Your view on what is useful, what do you think that a quantum computer will be able to achieve, whether it's assisted by Nvidia or not?
Sure. I think that one of the most important things that Jensen talked about today on stage was really narrowing the focus and deciding what the problem is, so that you can define success and chase after it. I do think that there's fairly wide agreement in the community that one of the first areas is to be accelerated and to have new kinds of problems solved that weren't before is in chemistry, biochemistry related areas. I mean, there's some kind of sniff test this passes, right? You've got basically quantum physics in the quantum device and the ability for that to model quantum physics in terms of what's required for very accurate chemistry just kind of makes sense. So we think that that's going to be the first area that's disrupted, or at least I do. I'm sure there's people on my team who disagree with me. As we saw today from the panelists, there are a wide variety of opinions on everything in quantum, but we think that's promising.
Well, we're grateful for yours. Tim Costa, Senior Director of Quantum Computing at Nvidia. Thank you very much. A lot more coming up. We speak with IonQ Executive Chairman Peter Chapman. That's next. We'll be right back. This is Bloomberg Technology.
Again, now we got Executive Chairman for IonQ, Peter Chapman.
Amelia, unlock the door.
All right, and we got some random advertising, but so in a nutshell, essentially, they're just, what I heard from that is it's kind of CYA. They really don't want to get too involved, but they want to cover their bases and just have their fingers in pots in case something takes off. They don't want to be left behind. I mean, his answers were very, I guess, were very CYA, so he's having to walk this interesting tightrope of trying to justify his job while not contradict Jensen's skepticism, but at the same time he doesn't really come across as a believer. So it just sort of strikes me as like a nice cushy job. Yeah, why not? I wouldn't mind that. Yeah.
Welcome back to a special Bloomberg Technology at Nvidia's GTC Quantum Day. IonQ was one of the quantum computing companies invited on stage today alongside Jensen Huang here at GTC's Quantum Day. The company's stock was one of those hardest hit January 8th after Nvidia's Jensen Huang made those comments about...
So IonQ does neutral atom quantum computing in ion traps. They also collaborate with, I believe, with Amazon, and they're expecting to open up large centers. Mainly they're based in Maryland, if I understand correctly. Baltimore, I guess. So there's a couple of pretty strong quantum information groups in NIST in Baltimore. So, and University of Maryland also is involved in quantum computing, so, or quantum information theory. So
quantum computing and its usefulness being, quote, a decade or more away. Since then, IonQ has gone through some changes, appointing Niccolo De Masi as its new CEO. The former CEO, Peter Chapman, continues as executive chair, and I'm delighted to say joins us now on set. And what was interesting in the conversation with Jensen Huang is that you...
So from what I heard from various sources, IonQ's issue was that it was very academic. It was essentially a friends network of... it was like a group of buddies just doing stuff with some concerns about focus and deliverables. And so I guess that's what led to the shakeup.
We're balanced in saying I don't think we necessarily agree on everything here still. Let's start with the main point, which is, did we define usefulness? And do you have a sense that Jensen Huang has changed his timeline of when he thinks usefulness of your industry will...
I doubt it, man. Jensen doesn't want this to be happening right now.
...be achieved?
Well, I think today was kind of the purpose of today was to bring that timeline in. Right. To kind of take back what it is that he had said before. He said it on stage, I think, twice. It was his...
It's not very convincing.
Mea culpa.
Yes.
Right? So that was the purpose of today's kind of...
He said that he would be the first CEO probably in history to invite a panel of people to tell him that he was wrong.
It was wrong, exactly. So, and it was funny today, just in general, we've been working with NVIDIA on a demonstration for today that was with Nvidia, AWS, and AstraZeneca, where we gotten a 20x improvement on what we had done previously. Also, we had taken with ANSYS, with a product that they do, which is normally run on GPUs,
right,
and managed to get a 12% increase in using our quantum computers. So while those numbers are not really enough to take over the market, because usually you need 1 or 2 orders of magnitude to be disruptive to a market, the fact that we managed to do it on kind of our 36 qubit system is really quite remarkable.
Nvidia has a quantum computing business insofar as, and we got into it during the panel, that you have access to architecture, DGX, their high performance GPUs,
yep,
also some software and open source solutions. And what they would say is that that will help your engineers and computer scientists calibrate, reduce error counts, design better. Is that how it actually plays out for you?
Some aspects. We have a DGX cluster that we use for designing of the quantum computers. Not so much in the error correction aspect, that's something we do ourselves. But certainly we use a number of GPUs for designing the quantum computer itself. We also, for small qubit counts, because as soon as you get into beyond about 35 qubits, you can no longer simulate one of these on a GPU.
Right.
So for those, we actually run the simulation on a GPU just to make sure our hardware is working correctly. The problem is when you get to 64 qubits, you need 2.5 billion GPUs.
Because for each qubit you add, performance essentially doubles.
Right. And it means that the matrix math that you have to do suddenly is doubling as well. So basically, it's about 35 qubits to fully simulate it. You can only get it on a single DGX 100.
Peter, I've got to hold you to this, and I wonder if it ties into the new CEO and, just sort of reset a little bit. There's a difference between lab experiment and commercial use, making money, revenue generation. That's the question I get for you most.
Yes. So what Jensen said, one area we definitely agree on, which is you need to find a set of applications early on that you can start to make money on and to build that flywheel to be able to power your R&D. And so the examples we're talking today, for instance, in the chemistry application and also with ANSYS is exactly.
It's kind of like Goldilocks. The first one spoke too fast, the second one spoke too slow. Maybe the third one is going to speak just right.
Exactly those kinds of things. So that's exactly what our plan is.
Peter, you are the executive chairman now. You were CEO 1 week ago. Kerrisdale issued a short report on your stock, on your company. I just want to give you a chance to respond, as we've not had a chance to speak since then.
Sure. It's a short report. So their goal is obviously to try to cast doubt about the company and make money that way. Unfortunately, it's just if you're a public company, these are the kinds of things you have to endure. We don't put much credence.
Oh, look at the pain in his eyes. Ooh.
To those things.
The last thing I want to ask you is about how...
Oh, the report hurt him, man. It hurts me to watch him.
Big today was in the change of trajectory or momentum for your industry. Jensen Huang is a character, and he was... honest on stage, but GTC is an incredible event. It has scale, it has eyeballs. Do you think you'll see something of substance come out of this for your company, for your sector?
It's certainly Jensen's goal was to give us the microphone today to be able to get out our story, and that's certainly important. But I say, if you were Sam Altman 5 years ago trying to convince the world that AI is coming, probably he wouldn't have been successful. And the question is how much time should Sam Altman try to convince the world AI is coming? Instead, just go back and actually make it happen. So in that sense, actually, it's probably not that significant. What really matters is actually going and doing it, not actually getting the message out.
IonQ Executive Chairman Peter Chapman, thank you for your time here in San Jose at GTC. Okay,
Yeah, for a startup, that's just very low energy. I can see why they replaced him as a CEO. It was very, very low energy. Wow. Whoa. Wow. Wow, that would not be inspiring. That is not how Steve Jobs got people to make miracles happen. Wow.
Much more to come. Alan Barat, CEO of D-Wave, another one of the quantum computing CEOs on stage, joins us, and they have an example of success or something useful, blockchain architecture progress. That's next. This is Bloomberg Technology.
All right, fair enough. Come on. Come on, hit me. Hit me with Alan.
If I just make myself look super busy and stressed.
Hello, Alan. Yeah, so far, Alan has impressed me the most. These format just looks so dated. Wow, like, I don't know, these finance firms just feel like they're holding on tooth and nail to the past.
Welcome back to a special edition.
Man, we've been hearing that since the 80s. Holy crap.
Of Bloomberg Technology, live at Nvidia's GTC Quantum Day. So shares of some quantum computing companies sank today after leaders spoke at an event with Nvidia CEO Jensen Huang. The plunge follows a similar move back in January after Huang said it would be more than a decade before the technology, quantum computing, could do something that's useful. One of those quickest to say in the month of January that Huang was wrong was D-Wave CEO Alan Barat. D-Wave shares under pressure today for whatever
He is such a brat.
reason. But Alan, I'm grateful for your time, and I think it's fair to say that among the panelists, you maintained those areas that you don't agree with Jensen Huang on. How in any way has your mind changed on those differences through the course of today?
Well, my mind has not changed.
He looks like a fighter. He looks like he's got grit. Good energy, good energy.
The fact of the matter is that we at D-Wave have taken a very different approach to quantum computing from everybody else in the industry. And as a result of that, we are actually able to support useful, important applications today. And I think
Hold on a second. This is what I just finished listening to. CEO of D-Wave. So okay, it's just this. Okay, this segment. Okay, so I already went through this in a previous video, so you can look that up. But yeah, it was quite impressive. So Alan gave the most impressive responses and the most coherent responses, and yeah. I would say that despite sort of the format and the sort of questions that were asked, I think Alan really did a good job. Could people be doing better? Maybe, I don't know. But, you know, none of them are talking about the rate of progress in China, and I think that's how you get people to put the money down is, you know, it's FUDs, fear, uncertainty, doubt. You know, we're not yet in a new stage of human consciousness. So, you know, use the Chinese successes to your advantage. Say, look, China is making huge successes. This is a paradigm shifting technology. This is a technology that can define who the next, you know, who's going to dominate the world economics and essentially the world for the next 100 years. And therefore, it's not a question of if we succeed at making these quantum computers, but when, and it needs to be sooner rather than later. So in addition to pushing forward on these startup ventures, which is fair enough, we should do it. We should try to see if we can launch this quantum computing now. There needs to be a far larger pool of talent. You know, we need to be honest that we're not making the best use of the pool of talent that currently exists, whereas China is. And in addition to these startups, there needs to be more funding across the board for this research area if the US wants to remain, I mean, leave alone in the lead, if it wants to remain in any way competitive for the rest of the century, it needs a whole paradigm shift. I think that's along the lines of what I would be saying if I were CEO of a quantum startup. But yeah, at this stage, I'm still undecided on which of these quantum technologies is the most promising. So I don't know, just taking a bit of a break.